we will cover ball and socket joint. What is the literal meaning of ball and socket joint? Ball and socket would mean that you actually have a circular ball-like structure and you have a socket, stimulating, this is the other bone and the ball will exactly fit into this. And then it will rotate and revolve. So this is actually the ball and this is the socket. So this is known as the ball and socket joint. Now where will you find this ball and socket joint?
Can I answer?
Sorry?
Can I answer?
Yes, please do.
Near our pelvis back, right?
Ma'am, shoulder joint.
And the other, very good, very good. So the other one is the shoulder joint. So basically the ball and socket joint gives you complete and very free movement to an extent that at times it also gives, it gives 360-degree movement. Many of you would be, if this is the shoulder, this is the neck, right? This is the shoulder, right? Now all of you will be able to rotate your hand, right from this portion from your shoulder. You can rotate it 360 degree. Just try doing that. You can make a complete circle with your fingers like this if you rotate your hand.
Ma'am, I didn't understand about the hip joint. How can we rotate it 360 degree?
If I said, most likely 360 degree, not always 360 degree. Only owls have the propensity to rotate their heads to an extent 360 degree, not complete 360 degree. Complete 360 degree is difficult. With our hip joints, right? With your hip joints, you can move, if not 360 degree, but at least to 280 degree, you can rotate it. Understood? Just try doing this. Basically, ball and socket joints are the most flexible kind of joint which allows really free movement. They come under the freely movable joints. Freely movable joints are of 3 types, right? Ball and socket joint, hinge joint, and pivot joint, right? So when we said about partially movable joint, we only had one example, that is the backbone. That is partially movable, not fully movable. And when we discussed about immovable joint, under immovable joint, we had the skull or the upper jaw, which has got, actually our skull looks like this, but you would be surprised to know that our skull has a lot of joints in between, but none of them cannot be moved. It's all fixed. It's all fixed joint. Partially joint, fixed joint, and freely movable. Under freely movable, we have 3 types: ball and socket, hinge, and pivot. Is this clear now? Yashika?
After ball and socket, you said, can you tell me of those 3 freely movable joints?
This is what I'm saying. The 3 freely movable joints are ball and socket, hinge, and pivot.
Okay.
Ball and socket joint, hinge joint, and pivot joint. It's clear, Neha? Okay.
So you see something about how they move.
Yes, it's all about bones and joints are discussed about how they move only. What else do you want to let me teach you? Tell me. Is there anything else?
How they move.
Yeah.
So the main thing you want to know is how they move.
Yeah, the most important thing is that how they move, because the chapter that we are studying about is movement, and skeletal system and the joints give us movement. So in joints, we are discussing about movements. All right. So we have covered ball and socket. Now we will be discussing about hinge. What is the meaning of a hinge?
I'm thinking why you didn't take hinge.
No, so I'm coming one by one. I just discussed ball and sockets.
Ma'am, can I say what a hinge is?
Yes, Vamika?
Ma'am, so we have cupboard, so a cupboard also has a hinge. So when you open, because of the hinge, our cupboard moves. We are able to open it. Correct. So, ma'am, in the same way, we have a hinge in our body also.
Correct. So basically, it's not that we actually have a hinge, but the movement looks like a hinge. For example, this is the door. Okay. How does a door open and close? You must have seen, there are hinges in your door like this, right? Which are fixed. One part is fixed to the door and one part is fixed to the wooden frame on the wall, right? Now, basically, the door will only move one way. It will only move either back or it will move front. These are the only one side movement, one way movement. It will not move in any other direction. So basically,
ma'am,
yeah,
can you tell me the third type of joint? I forgot the name.
pivot.
Ma'am, after ball and socket joint and pivot, what's the other one?
These are the only three that we are discussing today. There's something called a gliding joint also, but we will not be discussing gliding
Ma'am,
joint.
we are only discussing ball and socket and pivot joint.
We are discussing ball and socket, hinge and pivot.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, this is hinge, right?
So where do you find hinge joint which only does a movement like a door, like this and like this? Can you tell me, Neha?
Ma'am, where we find in our body?
Yes.
Ma'am, in our arms we are doing that, right?
Our arm
Ma'am,
is like
elbows. Elbows and knees.
yes, elbows, elbow. Arm is big.
Yes, ma'am, elbows and knees.
Elbows.
Elbows,
I
knees,
didn't get the word.
and also the fingers.
Even knees.
Fingers. Have you noticed your fingers? It will only come up and down, up and down. You can't take your finger backwards, can you?
Sister can do it.
Only you can't do it on your own. You have to push it with another hand and then do it. That is you're forcing your joint. That's not a normal movement. Who will tell me what is a pivot joint?
Ma'am, can I give like the examples of pivot joint where they
Like
are?
the hip.
No, not our hip.
Ma'am,
Ma'am, they are found in the, ma'am, there's like, I had noted it down years back, ma'am, but it's like a very long scientific name called proximal radiolunar joint.
Okay.
Ma'am, can I answer?
Okay, yeah, Neha.
Ma'am, the pivot joint is also known as the rotary joint.
So
The
basically,
move,
yeah, thanks, Neha. So basically, when you just said that it is a rotary joint, what does that mean? When you say it's a rotary joint?
ma'am, I was telling the definition. Can I say?
Okay, tell me. Go ahead.
The moving bond rotates within a ring formed by a concave surface of a second bond and an adjoining ligament. Am I right?
Yes. So what happens in a rotary joint, pivot joint, is it only gives rotation. So where in our body can you find that part of our body can
Neck.
only rotate?
Neck.
Rotate.
neck, ma'am. Neck.
Neck. Yes, correct. Neck. So basically, if this is your head, this is your shoulder, right? You can move your head, neck, in almost round and round in every direction. So you find pivot joint in the joint connecting your head to the neck. Head
Yes, ma'am. It
to
moves
the neck.
360 degrees.
Almost 360 degrees, right? Almost 360 degrees. So this is, and in case of an owl, it is actually 360 degrees.